Welcome to the midweek message from First Grapevine, a United Methodist church. We're glad you've joined us. Please take a moment and let us know you are watching by registering on our church website or mobile app. We hope this encouraging word will be a blessing for the middle of your week.
Welcome to our midweek message. We have a very special treat for you today as we are leading into Pentecost, the celebration of the birth of the church. We've got a couple of very special church members that, if you don't know them, I'm so excited to have the honor of getting to introduce them to you. I'm joined first here by Kenda Diehm. You want to say hi?
Hello, all.
And we'll come back to you. I want to get you to talk a little bit about who you are. You've actually been on here with us when we've been doing online worship. You were our first guest when we had to go to online only, so it's great to have you back. And you've been on the porch, you've been involved in worship, and of course, the people around here, they know you because you are just a staple. You're a part of the landscape pretty much around here. This is Mr. Dick Guckel, and we're so glad to have you.
Glad to be here.
So I want to say special thanks to both of you because, as you well know, it's a pandemic, all right? So we're not supposed to go places. Today, while we're actually recording, is a national holiday, and it's raining cats and dogs out there. So you have all the reason to not show up or to say no, and here you both are, and I couldn't be more grateful to both of you. So we're talking about the church and the life of the church, and you've been here for a long time now. How long have you both been here at First Grapevine?
I've been here 15 years.
15 years? And how about you?
About the same for me.
About the same?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, did you grow up Methodist? Did you grow up in the church?
I didn't grow up.
Well, don't we know that?
In any particular church. Yeah, it was kind of. This is really my first church experience. I don't remember hardly anything about the other churches that I was involved with because I really wasn't involved. I mean, to just go on a Sunday isn't being involved, but I feel this is really a big part of my life.
And you're very involved here, yeah. So what all do you do? I know you usher. Yeah. I know you teach some Sunday school classes. I know you're involved in small groups.
Yeah. I got Seekers going on Zoom.
That's the Sunday school class that...
Right.
Most of you are of a certain generation.
We have one exception.
Which is?
I won't name the person, but she's considerably younger.
Oh.
and might even be classified as a grandchild.
Well, you also... You've got a few people in there. That's a broad range in there. Most of you are in... Your age range,
yes,
I would say.
Yes.
Is that,
over 60.
Am I playing it safe? Over 60?
Over 60.
Yeah, but not everybody. Yeah, you're right. The youngest is 30. So it's a pretty broad range, because I know who you're talking about. Pretty broad range there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you went to Israel with us on our pilgrimage.
That was awesome.
Just in November.
Yes.
Which feels like so long ago, but really just a few months ago, back when we could travel and all be on the same bus together and everything.
Yeah, it was great. Absolutely great.
Yeah.
And so was Mishi.
Oh, our tour guide.
Tour guide.
We'll talk about that in just a second. But come back. Kenda, did you grow up Methodist?
I grew up Methodist,
Okay, I wasn't sure. I mean, obviously you're quite well invested in the Methodist tradition at this point, but yeah, I didn't know if you grew up Methodist. Now, where are you from originally?
I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
In Tulsa? Okay. Well, we'll forgive you for that.
Well, I suppose that's better than Arkansas.
Now, wait a minute.
It is better than Arkansas.
I went to school in Arkansas.
No. Yeah.
I was a Razorback.
My condolences. I'm from Arkansas. I've had to learn. I used to, when telling Bible stories, compare the region where Jesus is from in Galilee. I used to compare it to Oklahoma as an example of a podunk place. But people from Oklahoma get so angry when you say that. So I pick on my own home state of Arkansas. But then other people from Arkansas will come up and they'll say, yeah, you're right. It's the dump. But we love it. It's our dump, but we love it. Yeah, but people from Oklahoma, I had to switch up my game there a little bit because they get a little prickly about it. So I feel mean emails being written through the future, written to me about stop picking on Oklahoma. Yeah. So you're from Oklahoma, and so again, you grew up in the Methodist Church, but this is really your first church home. And this week is Pentecost. That's why I've put on a tie, and of course I'm always wearing the red shoes. But we've even decorated differently, thanks to our altar guild who braved the pandemic to come out to set up this nice new altar arrangement that we have here in our living room. But we are celebrating the birth of the church, what it means to answer the call for us to come together and do life together. I think that's something that, it's super challenging right now because we can't do church the way that we like to. We can't do church the best way, which is to be able to gather in a room and be together. And it's really sad, isn't it? It's hard to sit here and to know where all our friends, our family, where they're supposed to be sitting and to be here and they're not there. But at the same time, it's a reminder of how important they are. That's right. How important it is to stay connected. And so I wanted to just have a little conversation with you about church, about what does it mean to you. And I especially want to have this conversation, not just for our friends who know us, who would be so excited to get to see you on our midweek message, but I especially wanted to introduce you to people who are new to church, who are new to God, looking for answers, people who are really suffering during this time, and who are on the internet and have stumbled across us, because we know you're out there, and I just wanted them to hear from you. So what does church mean to you, and what's something great that's happened? It doesn't have to be this church, but in your church life, what's something just great that's happened?
Well, for me, it's just a place to belong, support people that are going through different things. A lot of them I can relate to, some I can't, but it's always been just a place where I've always known I've been welcome and loved and accepted no matter what.
Yeah, it is that, and it's something that we don't take for granted right now. A place where we're all welcome, we're all loved, and everybody here is welcome through the doors. It's hard to explain that to people because I'll talk to people who are unchurched and they'll say, I'm afraid if I walk through the door, I'll catch on fire. No, it's not. No, quite the opposite. I'm afraid sometimes that we're too awkward in how much we greet new people. And we don't mean to scare you off. We just really are that excited that you're here. What's something great about church in your life?
One of the things I like about our Seekers Sunday School class, in which everybody is over 60. I guess we've discussed that, haven't we? Yeah. We get into some controversial subjects, and everybody is free to say what they feel, and everybody is still loved. It makes no difference. We don't hold anything against anybody. We respect their opinions. It's a great group. And I don't know anything about any other Sunday school classes, but mine is really good.
I think that's what I love about the church, especially this church, is that we can agree to disagree. Mm-hmm. For me, to learn, I need people that think the exact same way I do. Because if we all thought the same, there would be no growth. Where this allows me to grow and then go back and search the scriptures and see, what is God really trying to tell me through this? Yeah. Or how can I become a better person?
I like that you said if we're all thinking the same thing, there's no growth. I've been known to say it in a more snarky way, which is if everybody in the room is thinking the same thing, someone isn't thinking. And, this is that kind of church because we have a diverse range of thought. If we were to poll where people land on certain hot topic issues, kind of represent the full spectrum here. Yep. And you're right, it's a safe place to come to learn, to grow, and let iron sharpen iron. And your Seekers Sunday School class, I'll tell you, if you're looking for a knockdown, drag-out argument, if you like to get in there and throw down your controversial opinion, that is a safe place to do it. And it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, we're studying an interesting book now called Pilgrimage Through the Last Third of Your Life, which is from age 60 on. I guess the oldest person in our group is 91. He's also in my Emmaus reunion group Tuesday mornings, which we're doing with Zoom. But it's interesting. It's difficult in these times, but Zoom has helped a lot. We've got some people who are physically incapacitated and can't come to church, and they're participating in our Zoom Seekers classes. I think yesterday we meet at noontime, and yesterday we had 47, and that's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah, you and I were talking earlier about, during this strange time, about all the good things that God is doing and the good things that are happening. And yeah, you mentioned technology and being able to connect more with people who, even during good times, we would have trouble remaining in communication with them. So that's a good positive way to look at it. I do think that church, even though we're not able to meet, like I said, and I really miss that, church has done a great job of providing community during a difficult time for a lot of people who wouldn't otherwise have it.
Yeah.
I think that's important.
Yeah, I know Rhonda's pretty busy setting up Zoom sessions.
Rhonda is our amazing administrator who is the queen of Zoom. And so if you're at home listening and you're not part of a group, you can find her email. You can email any of us, but if you can find her email, contact her. She'll get you set up. Yeah. Sorry, I just have to remember we got guests in the room here with us.
You're clarifying things, and I appreciate that. So I requested a couple of things early on from her, and then I began to realize that everybody is bombarding Rhonda with Zoom requests. So I decided I'm just going to get a subscription, and I decided $15 a month. I won't have to go back to work. So I've set up a number of them, and as a matter of fact, we talked about how we may be communicating more with people now, and I don't know why that is, other than we feel lonely or we want to be connected with other people. But I emailed an old Navy buddy of mine who lives in Michigan. We would email back and forth, but I decided when I found out his wife had lung cancer and it was terminal, I'm going to set up a Zoom session. And we've had 3 sessions so far. And we talked for about an hour.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's wonderful. And I've been making phone calls, and other people have been calling me. One of the church members calls anybody over 60 every couple of weeks. I'm gonna put a tape recording on my answering machine that says, "We're okay. We're okay."
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. You're right. Yeah, because we are calling all of our more seasoned members, making sure they have what they need, doing grocery runs for them, checking in, and so we're keeping in touch that way. And I'm glad that our team is so effective that you're slightly annoyed with it. To me, that's killing multiple birds with one stone right there.
Yeah, it's great.
But that's important, and I love that. And I'm going to keep picking on you because I can, because we're friends.
Well, you've been doing it since you got here.
Exactly. Well, you're 83 years old.
I wasn't when you got here.
No, I wasn't. Yeah, I've certainly put some miles on you, I know. 83 years old, and you personally are setting up Zoom meetings and helping other people who perhaps struggle with technology able to stay in communication with other people. And I heard you say that you were worried about our administrator being overloaded with too much going on. And so you jumped in, you spent your own money setting up your own account so you can keep connecting people and help do work during a time when we're a little bit overloaded in our front office. So thank you so much.
Well,
that's just a remarkable witness of what you can do and not being, you're not slowed down by anything. I love that. Well, to tell a little story about, and you jump in anytime you want, and we're going to pick on him, and you can help me out.
Well, I don't want to pick on him because he actually does my computer, what do you want to call it?
Antivirus
software stuff. So
this is your IT guy?
This is my IT guy, so I'm not picking on him.
I see.
I think we need to edit that out so I don't start getting other phone calls.
Well, you are only established clients, right? You're not looking for new clients, yeah.
Close friends.
But yeah, I was gonna say you're way more polite than Carly because she likes to jump in and interrupt me. So interrupt me anytime you want. Help me out here. But I wanted to tell a little story on Dick Guckel as an example of what's great about life in the church.
What's coming?
No. Well, you may not want me to tell it, but it's too late now. That ship's already sailed.
Yeah, you've opened up the can.
So it was in March. It was right before the big pandemic. It was actually the week before. Already it's stressful. We're having to cancel mission trips. And due to things going on up here, I was responsible for a lot more than normal, a lot more than what falls under my job description typically. And I was feeling some stress. And Dick sees me on a Sunday, and he gets that serious face, really serious. Yeah, not that one, a really serious face. And he goes, I'm going to set up an appointment with you. I have some things I want to talk with you about. I'm going to set up an appointment. I'm going to get with Rhonda. I'm going to set up an appointment. Like real serious. And I thought, and Dick and I are friends, but I thought, oh my goodness, what complaint? What has gone wrong that
and
he's
that's
setting up?
What you told me.
I did.
Right.
What is wrong? He said, well, we'll talk about it. And so he set an appointment for Thursday afternoon, and he shows up, and he goes, Grant, I want you to come with me. Real serious. Has me get in his car. I mean, even as this is happening, I'm thinking, I don't get in anyone's car without knowing what's going on here, what we're doing. And you said to me then, you said, you've looked stressed out lately. You've had too much going on. And he said, and I hate to do this. I hate to make you worry about what I had on my mind. But he said, I know you well enough to know if I don't make you take a break, you're not going to. So I've reserved an hour of your time. We're going to go to my house. We're going to have coffee. We don't have to talk about work. Talk about whatever you want. And I'll bring you back when we're done. That sound good? And so we sat on his porch. He has a lovely home, by the way. And we had coffee, talked about Israel, talked about all sorts of fun things. And it was just that breath, that break that I needed. And I think that it's one of those things where if you've got too much going on, even just a little bit of relaxation has a huge impact. It's like a drop of dye in a glass of water. It just takes a little bit to just change the whole thing. And so just sitting for an hour with a friend made it possible for me to get through that weird transition where we went from life as normal to life is completely different. And I thank you so much for that. And as you know, sitting on the porch talking about the Bible and other things.
It was the porch,
sacred.
right?
Yeah, we're sitting on the porch. Yeah. And that's just such a sacred thing. It's such a sacred gift. And we live in a world where, you're in your 80s, I'm in my 30s. How else would we be friends? You worked in the IT industry. You've lived in other parts of the world. How else would we be friends? Other than in the unifying power of God through the church. I mean, my life would not be the same without my friends that I've met through church.
Well, and you reminded me when you said he made me take a time out and take a breath. Mm-hmm. And it reminds me of Pentecost. That's what Pentecost is all about, is when the Holy Spirit came and breathed that new life into those believers. And it's taking that breath, and that's what I feel like the church is about. It gives us an opportunity, a place to go where we can just take a breath.
Yeah. No, that's an excellent segue. So I wanted to tell that story on you, and thank you again. But it's an excellent segue into what is Pentecost. Now, the technical term is Pentecost means that it's a festival that falls 50 days after Passover. So it was originally a Jewish festival. It still is a Jewish festival. But it was a time when the early church were mostly Jewish people. They're gathered again in the upper room, same place that they had the Last Supper. It doesn't look like Da Vinci's painting, but you get an idea. They're gathered in that same place again, as Jesus had told them to do, gather and wait. And they're waiting, they're praying together. And the Holy Spirit, God's presence among us that ties us together, that's moving in us, descends on the room. And there's a rushing wind. There are tongues of flame over their head. And these are Jewish Christians from all over the known world at the time. They speak different languages, but they hear their own language coming out of their mouths, and they see that each other understands, and they're able to understand other people, even though they know they're speaking something different. And filled with this excitement and this presence of God, they flood out in the streets, and that's where really the witness of the church begins. Being able to say, look, God, the presence of God is uniting us, moving in us, breaking down barriers of language, of creed, of age, of all these differences. None of that matters. God is bringing us together. And that's why we say it's the birthday of the church. It's the beginning of answering this call to live life together and celebrate God's presence. Thanks for giving me that moment. Do you want to add to that?
Well, it was
more about that
interesting
story?
because as I was thinking about that, and I was visiting with a friend, we walk, social distancing, and as we were talking about this, it was just like, they were kind of sheltered in this room, but they were together. But I thought, what would have happened if they'd each been in their own home, and all of a sudden the Spirit came upon them, the Holy Spirit and the flame? They would have thought they were crazy. But being together, they could witness to each other and comfort each other that this really is going on. We're not going crazy, and confirm that this is really God's work. So for me, it's like not being in the church, you kind of set yourself apart where it can be kind of a lonely experience and not really know, is this for real or not? You get that confirmation by being together.
That's a good way to put it. That's one of the many reasons why we need each other. That iron sharpens iron. That also that confirmation of, yes, this is the direction we're supposed to go. We feel it. I see that a lot in the church where, particularly if we're planning something, if several of us have a similar idea or come to a similar conclusion at the same time, we see that as confirmation of the Spirit. Like, yeah, this must be what we're supposed to do if we're all thinking it. Yeah.
And nowadays, due to technology, we have to be virtually together.
But it's still,
But we're
we
together.
still, I think, see God moving in that. Well, that story's in Acts chapter 2, by the way. I want to go ahead and throw that out there. I hope that I'll make a note, and Mark can already have that up there because we talked about it before I mentioned where it is. But yeah, that's the movement of the Spirit in the church, and it's just such a special experience when you get to be a part of it.
And I think what I loved about that story in Acts is where, Peter says, they're being accused of being drunk, and he's like, it's like what, 9 in the morning?
9 a.m. in the morning.
9 in the morning. They're not drunk.
Yeah.
And I will have to say, in college, at times I had been accused of being drunk just because I was having fun, and it's like, I don't drink. But you can't have fun and not be drunk?
Yeah. It's 9 a.m. That's one of my I think that's one of the funniest lines in all of the Bible is, what is wrong with these people? Are they all drunk on new wine? Like, no. Yeah, Peter, and that's another important part to me of this story is it's Peter getting another shot. And this is sort of Peter 2.0. Peter's one of the 12 disciples, and he's the one who is often, unfortunately, used as the example of how to put one's foot in one's own mouth.
Yeah, he does what I do. His mouth gets moving before his brain is engaged.
Yeah,
right?
Over and over. And he speaks when he doesn't, and then there are times when he had an opportunity to stand up for his faith, say he believed in Jesus. Then he didn't have anything to say. Well, he did say it wasn't true. And that's really where we left him in terms of his public life before this happens. That's not a lot of time has passed here, but we see him get another shot. And I think that story of redemption, we talk about confirming one another in a group, in a church, and there's also, I think, that strength of reaffirming someone and giving him another shot. Because you can be your own worst critic, but it takes a group of people who are supporting you and forgiving you, and that's something that God does through a group of people, through the church. And we see that right there with Peter. Well, let me jump to since I've got you here. You've both been to Israel. As we think about the life of the church or the story of Pentecost, is there something that you saw as you toured the Holy Land that jumps out to you that you remember or help make this seem a little bit more real? Because I know that we went to, for me, it being in the streets of Jerusalem, which is a very international city today, and you do hear a lot of languages. I mean, there are, at any given moment, you're hearing 3 different languages anywhere, but you see people from all over the world. And for some reason, walking around the city, especially at night, it makes me think of this passage, the beginning of Acts, and just so many voices, so many people.
You know what I think about is I just remember I was with Judy Brown, and we were kind of going through the city, and it was really crowded, and there's so much going on. But yet these people, they not only heard people speaking in their own language, but they actually listened.
Yeah.
Because, you hear so much, but do you actually stop and listen? Does it really? And yet it did. I mean, we had, 3,000 people that day were saved.
Yeah.
And so I don't know.
Well, two things you said there. One, you mentioned Judy Brown, who is another church member. I see where she sits right there, and I miss her so much. I wish we could get her out to come and be a part of this, but she refuses to speak on a microphone, which is so fun. If you know her, that's pretty funny. But I like how you said they listened. That made me think. The first time I went to Israel, like 12 years ago, I remember walking through the streets tonight with a friend of mine, and we're both from around here, and we heard an accent that in a crowd just made us stop. It was a strong southern drawl. Of all the things to hear anywhere, you stop and we listen. Where is that coming from? And I feel like it must have been like that. Like they paused because they realized that sounds familiar, even though it's very foreign and it's in a foreign place. I love that they stopped and listened and wanted to know what was going on. To me, it speaks to the reality of what happened. I believe this is a true story. Mm-hmm. I think that's worth mentioning. Say that, I really feel this had to happen, and it had to happen this way. What were you about to say, Dick? You look like you had something on your brain.
No, I'm just focused.
Just focused. Yeah. All right.
One of the things that I learned a lot by going to Israel, and the side conversations with our guide Mishi, I really enjoyed. He and I talked about some things that I can't talk about using this microphone. But you know him very well.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that the Sea of Galilee was so far away from Jerusalem. Mm-hmm. The Sea of Galilee is so much smaller than the Dead Sea. And that, at least it appears, that the reason why Jesus and the disciples went up to the Sea of Galilee is because Peter's mother-in-law owned a house up there. And they stayed with her. And I thought that was kind of interesting, if he would arrive the first day and say, Mom, I'd like you to meet 12 of my closest friends, or 11 of 12 of my closest friends, and we're going to stay a while.
Yeah.
And most everything occurred within not far from the Sea of Galilee. Mm. And I never knew that or thought about it, that was really amazing.
I'm glad you point out the reality of the geography, because you're right that the story of Jesus, the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the actions, the activity, the stuff takes place right there on the lake. We call it Sea of Galilee, but it's a lake.
8 by 13.
That annoys the locals. Oh, these tourists coming in calling it a sea. It's not a sea. The sea's that way. This is a lake. And so much of it happened right there. But yet when you get to the book of Acts, which is just Acts of the apostles, the actions of the early church, they travel the world. They go everywhere. And you're right. By foot, by the way they traveled, Jerusalem was a long way. Yeah. And when they went to the big city, that was a big change. They didn't stop there. they end up spread out around the world. And
a lot of activity in Turkey.
A lot of activity in Turkey, which again, you go and look at a map and think about how they travel. Even traveling now
that's quite a distance.
Would be quite difficult. Even to do it today, if you were to say get in a car and drive, you would have several border crossings. You would pass a couple of wars. That's a lot. And that's today. It'd be so much more dangerous and challenging then. And they did it. And it all started with that event that happened in the room.
Yep.
It all started with the Spirit of God moving in them. And they wanted to share that joy with everyone that they could meet. And it comes down to pretty simple stuff when we think about it's a place where I've always felt welcome. We think about it's a place where I can serve with my own two hands and help people stay connected. It's a place where, I've got friends looking out for me, friends that I wouldn't have otherwise met. And they're so moved by that collective purpose to serve God that they can't stop. They keep going all over the world. Some made it, according to church tradition, like Thomas, for example, ended up all the way in India, modern-day India. It's incredible. It's also a reminder that we are called to do the same thing.
Yep.
To share it with as many people as we can. Not necessarily with our words. That doesn't always mean, bake a sheet of cookies and go to your next door neighbor and say, let me tell you about Jesus. I mean, that might be a little off-putting, but we can have those conversations about deeper things. We can invite people to come to our Zoom meetings, our Sunday school classes. We can witness to this special gift because it's that important and it makes that much of a difference.
I have a friend of mine who always reminds all of us that your actions speak louder than your words. And if you live a Christian life, that sets an example for people.
Yeah, really does. Really does. Well, what's something funny or crazy that's happened at church? Any good stories to tell?
I've got several, but
what's one you don't think we've heard?
Oh, I don't know about any that. Well, yeah, I think most of them you probably have heard by some stretch of the means. I think one of them that people wouldn't have known probably had they not gone to Ken's funeral was he was a jokester. And one Sunday, Cindy Ryan was supposed to preach. And so before they preached, they always had a bulletin that they would make a mock-up of and then send out and have everybody proofread. And so they had sent it out, and when Cindy got what was the title of her sermon, it was supposed to be something like, what in the world is going on? Well, somebody, we won't say who, had changed one of the words to an inappropriate word. And you could hear her yelling from her office, that's not my title, that's not my title. And she goes storming into this particular person's office saying, you think this is funny, but if this comes out in print on Sunday morning, hundreds of people are going to have this bulletin in their hands. Well, fast forward Sunday morning, this one person that was the culprit was in Africa. And so Cindy is standing back at the sound booth getting ready to preach the early service, and one of our more seasoned women come up to her holding the bulletin across her chest going, Cindy, I'm so offended by your title. Well, Cindy turns white, grabbing the podium, trying to stay on her feet, and then the lady goes, I don't know what that means, but so-and-so told me to tell you that. Oh. And she's like, this is just before I'm ready to preach, and he's clear across the world, and he's still messing with me.
Yep.
So
that's what's funny. That's what comes to my mind are all those little those humorous moments and the funny things that happen behind the scenes. That one of the reasons that we do these conversational style messages is because I kept having this experience where there's so many funny and insightful and meaningful conversations that happen in the office, on the sidewalk, on Dick Guckel's porch, stuff that I just wish we had a camera and a recorder is what I kept saying to myself for years. And so now that's what we do. But that's hilarious.
Well, I think you and I've talked that it would be fun. And again, this friend that I social distance walk with kind of came up with the idea it'd be fun if we could go back and get some of the funny clips over the years that church has done and put it on YouTube or something for people to see.
Well, I'm having those dug up. Those are gonna surface here pretty shortly. Don't you worry about that. Keep on the lookout. Actually, by the time this airs, they may have already had a chance to witness one.
Well, and you're talking about things that happen behind scene. One of the, I guess, the perks of volunteering at the church is when you're up here, sometimes you see some of the funny things that 90% of the people don't see. I remember John Mollett when he was here. Every morning he would come into the office singing some tune that you would semi-recognize, but he would change the words to it and have his own little rendition every day. And so when you were up there, you got to be witness to that.
Yeah, and he's a good
hilarious.
example. He was a senior pastor who was here my first year when I got moved here, and just always up to something. Yeah, it was hilarious. Do you got a good story to tell on somebody?
I can't think of anything.
You can't think of
I'm brain
anything.
dead.
I think there's also the meaningful stuff that happens behind the scenes. Since today, as we're recording, is actually Memorial Day, and again, I want to ask you in a second about what that means to you as a Navy veteran. On our Israel trip that we mentioned, while we're staying in Jerusalem, our hotel was next to a park, and I discovered while walking around at night that park had a exact replica of the Liberty Bell.
Yes.
That the United States had given to Israel, exact replica, and except unlike the real Liberty Bell, you could walk up and touch this thing. It's like close to the ground. And we were on the trip with Tony Waterbury, and he's also an octogenarian who was he was a Marine officer, career Marine officer, and I didn't tell him what we were doing, and he was really tired. He was, walking that much was hard on him. Because of his, he would never complain, but you see that much combat, the legs don't quite work quite the same. Now, he was a trooper the whole time, but he was exhausted at dinner every night. And I told him, I said, I'd like for you to go for a walk with me. Knowing how tired he was, but, no complaints. He just said, yes, sir, we will go. Didn't tell him what we're going for. And I walked Tony and Jill out to the park and showed them the Liberty Bell. And his emotional reaction to seeing that thing and being present with this really symbol of American freedom that he had given so much for. I was trying to have a little special treat for him, but it ended up being so meaningful for me to watch this national treasure, Tony, unite with a national treasure. That was a special thing. And I remember thinking specifically, what other job could you work that you get to be a part of stuff like this? Is there any other job in the world? I really don't think so. But that's a special moment that happened halfway around the world. But I think of countless times where through the life of the church, I get to be with someone during something very important. The kind of events you only get to read about. And we get to be there because of just the way that the blessing that the church is to our lives.
You mentioned Tony Waterbury. Years ago on Veterans Day in November, there used to be a tribute to all the veterans, and they would play the song for each of the branches of the armed forces. And when they would play the Marine hymn, and Tony was in the choir, he would stand up and salute, and he saluted Don Davis, who was out in the congregation, and Don Davis, who was also in the Marines, would stand up and salute him.
Yeah. And I think they're the only two Marines that I know of, but
right.
And you were in the Navy.
Yes.
And you served on a ship?
Yeah, the Marines
the
are
USS
a branch.
Lloyd?
Marines are a branch of the Navy. Yeah. A subset. Yeah.
My dad was a Marine.
I tried to get, because if you know anything about military, there's always that, it's very friendly joking back and forth between the the branches. And I asked Tony about this, about if he had any good Navy jokes. And he said, I've always avoided it my whole career because I'm an Annapolis graduate.
Oh,
so I graduated from the Naval Academy. He said, they educated me. I have nothing that I can joke about with them. But you served on the USS Lloyd?
Yes, sir.
And that was that an aircraft carrier?
No. It was only 300 feet long, carried about 150. In those days, it was only men. It was built on a destroyer escort hull, and it was designed to be in part of the amphibious Navy, which we don't do it now, but it would be part of a landing like D-Day.
Yeah.
Okay. And our mission was to anchor about a mile off the beach and direct all the landing craft into the beach. But we didn't see any action. I mean, we were down in the Caribbean on a cruise. We carried what were then called UDT. I think they call them SEALs now, Underwater Demolition Team. Mm-hmm. And we would carry them down to the Caribbean so they could practice blowing up stuff. And we spent some time over in the Mediterranean too. It's interesting how some people have memories of things that happened in the past, and other people don't have a clue. In one of my Zoom sessions with my Navy buddy Cal, he was telling me on the way back from the Mediterranean, we was coming back in a hurricane. I said, Cal, you've got a wonderful memory. I don't remember any of it. I do remember the weather being terrible. I was a storekeeper. I was the gunnery officer's storekeeper. And so I had this little shack, and I took the typewriter and put it on the deck, and I went in my rack and spent a good part of the 10 days crossing in the rack. I'd get up to eat, walk around a little bit. So I never got sick, but I have been sick once, and people say, well, what's it like? And I said, well, it's probably the closest thing to death without dying.
Well, thank you for your service. Thank you for what you do. And thank you for being willing to brave the elements and the pandemic to come and be here and talk with us today. Today, that's a very special.
What's an outing holiday
for me? Well, there you go. Well, then you're welcome.
This is the longest I've been out of the house.
No, that's another. I always feel like on Pentecost, kind of listing off all the benefits to being involved in church. I think especially for people who don't have that church home. And I like to tell the funny stories and the personal stories because it's that personal connection that just adds that enrichment, and it's a place where you are welcomed, accepted, you're prayed for, forgiven, and it's a place where you make friends. Because it's the people that you laugh with, they're the people that you share the hard moments with.
Yes.
And those that, if you know their personal stories and you get to have those fun times and the laughs, those are also the people who are there who will sit with you when you're crying.
Mm-hmm. And it's not just church. I mean, for many of us, we get together outside of church because we're friends.
See, I don't even necessarily think of, whenever I say church, it's not the thing that we do at this place.
It's not the building, it's the people.
It's the people.
Absolutely. It's the relationships.
And that's the, and I'm sure it's true with the two of you. We miss the people.
Yeah.
I mean, preaching in front of an empty church can't be much fun.
Well,
no.
And I think it's also, I just know working with the young adults too, a lot of people are getting tired of Zoom. Zoom is great. Yeah. But you don't have that personal contact. I mean, you see them on a screen, but it's different when you are together in a room, just like us here,
right.
Being able to talk and not have to worry about technology or feedback or So, yeah,
And it's difficult for me because I'm a hugger.
me too.
But it's worth saying, though, that Zoom is better than nothing right now.
Well, I'm going to interrupt you
You know?
because one
Sure.
thing I
Yeah,
thought,
good.
I'm interrupting you. One thing
Makes me happy.
One thing I thought of is you were talking about the experience with the Pentecost was you had talked about it happened during the festival time.
Yeah.
And I thought, God's timing is so perfect because there were hundreds and thousands of people there at that moment when they heard and saw and experienced Pentecost, so that many people had that opportunity to hear, and some of them took it, some of them didn't. And I'm thinking about the pandemic, that now we're on Zoom, and kind of what you've alluded to a little bit earlier, it has opened up to other people that normally would not be opened up just being here in the building. So in a way, it's kind of like a Pentecost to the world because technology opens it up to anybody that wants to hear and see.
What I would add to that is not only is God's timing really powerful and moving in strange ways because we have this technology that we can, I would add that Pentecost is not only about the good things that happen that day, but the bad things that happen in the world that forced the church to spread out, to keep going, to keep moving. The pandemic, the coronavirus, this is scary and it's stressful for the church as an institution, but it's also an opportunity. Yes. The destruction of Jerusalem by the Romans in 70, roughly 70, 72, that was a horrible event that displaced everyone who lived there, and it was also for the church an opportunity to spread and to grow. Pandemic is terrible. There's nothing good about it. It's also an opportunity for us to be a witness to a world, to say, you can't be in the room with people, we can still do community. There are lots of people who are realizing that, and there are jokes about it, but this is a reality that people were already socially distant before we had to be. People were already alone. I think that this has highlighted that and shown a need for a real community. And we have an opportunity to say, look, this is what God has called us to do. This is a meaningful, purposeful thing that you get to be a part of.
I think that's what part of being a church, part of a church is. It's bringing good out of tough, hard situations.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we probably need to wrap up. Do you have if you were to just say one thing to the person at home, well, how about two things? One, hear me out. You got something to say to our church friends and our family, people we know who aren't here. You got something to say to them because this will be the best recording you'll get to have during the pandemic. And the other is to the friend we've yet to meet, to the member of our family who perhaps doesn't know it yet. Do you have something to say to those two different groups of people?
One thing that you mentioned in one of your conversations, we ought to continue this, even after we're back to normal.
Yeah.
And I think it would be a great thing to show, during a church service, a 10-minute video or a 15-minute video or whatever of conversations. I'm not sure this one is, but they're all very interesting. And last night I looked at the midweek one, and some of them are funny. The people, for the most part, say what they feel. And I remember I mentioned to you earlier, Carly said something, and you got up and started to walk away.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. Okay, so I think, and maybe the way to do that and to get into introduce it to a regular church service, and this will probably be edited out. Maybe we ought to make the sermons a little shorter.
I don't know what to say about that.
I didn't expect you would.
Yeah.
I wasn't asking for any comments.
But I appreciate that. I would love to be able to do these recording sessions where we are being intentional to speak via the internet to our guest. I would just prefer to be able to have a live audience who want to participate in that, who want to come and fill the room and be a part of the conversation, and us do it together. Still speak to the cameras, but we do it collectively, not just a few of us in a quiet room. But so you said we got to keep doing this. That's sort of. But do you have anything to say to the guest, someone who hasn't had a chance to meet you yet?
Like what?
Come check us out. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. My Emmaus reunion group. There are 5 men from our church and 5 men from the
some other church,
White's Chapel. And I always tell the men from White's Chapel, we have openings.
Yeah.
But so far, nobody's taken me up on it. But
well, there are other people in the area.
Yeah.
If everybody in driving distance, if you added up all the church population, all of us together, we're not hitting 30%. We've all got openings, so we're not competing with other people for church people. Yeah.
Up until 15 to 20 years ago, I was really not involved in any particular church. And this church has become a home for me. And it's the people.
Yeah.
Very important part of my life.
Yeah.
I think that's when Jesus said, when the disciples came to Jesus, or someone came to Jesus and said, your mother and your brothers are out there. And he said, all those that believe in me and do my Father's work are my mother and my brothers and sisters. And I think you're right. We are family.
Yep. Who's your neighbor, right?
Yeah.
It's my family. Yeah. All right, what about you? You got anything to say to those 2 groups I mentioned?
Well, I can't wait till when we can all get together again and I can give you a hug legally. And second of all, to those that have never been here before, come, we have a place at the table waiting for you.
And you too can get hugs, right?
And you too can get hugs.
Yeah. No, I thank you both. That's my thought is, one, to all of our friends, I'm glad that they get to see, because if you don't know, I mean, you're both just very important parts of our community, and you mean a lot to us. And you downplay that, and I know I get in trouble when I talk about how important you are, but they're very important people. And so to our lifelong members, I'm glad they get to see you. It's not as good as the real thing, but they get to see you. It's a little bit better than a Zoom meeting. And to our guests, to our friends, these are just 2 of the many interesting people who are part of our community, who are looking for new family members to adopt, for new friends, looking for new people to welcome them into what it means to be the church. And there's a place for you. You joke, but seriously, we have openings, and we're a little bit more complete whenever you come and join us and you're a part of what we have going on.
And I think if for me anyway, if I feel a strong part of this church and I enjoy it and I enjoy the people, I get involved. Yeah. And I like you, right? You get involved in different things. I've been on the finance committee. I'm on trustees now.
Well, let's not talk about all that.
Part of the safety committee.
Well, scare
I'm an usher, and I just want to be part of the church.
Well, there are ways to serve. Yeah,
absolutely.
There are things that you can do, and whatever your gifts are, there's a place for you to plug in and make a difference. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
we all have different gifts.
I joke about serving on committees, but that's important work. Yeah, and we always need more help. Well, we would probably better sign off. We've taken up a lot of time. But could I put one of you on the spot here? You can both say no. You have that right. But I'd like for one of you to say a prayer for everybody out there who's listening. Would that be okay?
Not me.
I would be glad to.
All right.
Father, we just thank you for the opportunity we have to gather together, whether it's in person or through technology. We just thank you for that gift too. And Father, we especially thank you for your Son and for the Holy Spirit and just the opportunity we have to celebrate Pentecost and just the difference it's made in our lives and the lives of this church. And we just ask you to be with all those out there that they might come to know you if they don't, and to find this church, if not this, another that they might be able to call home. Just thank you. In your Son's name we pray and praise. Amen.
Thank you for that beautiful prayer. I think it's so important to hear from her. And thank you. You also did something very important, because you looked at me and you said, "Not me." And I wanted to show that. He's my friend, and he talks to me that way, which means you are welcome here. You won't be put on the spot, won't be asked. You can always just say, "Nope, I'm not talking to a microphone."
Everybody has different skills.
Yeah, so thank you. That's very important service that we get to show them that, yeah, you come here and we're not putting a microphone in your face if you don't want to talk to anybody. You don't have to.
You noticed I'm not shy about saying "not me."
And so if you've got questions, or if you'd like to be connected with one of them, just go ahead and email me and I can forward that message on to them. We appreciate your time. We hope you have a great rest of your week.
For current information about the effects of COVID-19 precautions at First Grapevine Church, visit firstgrapevine.org/COVID-19 updates.